Welcome to the Homefront Podcast, hosted by me, Becca Bookman. The Homefront Podcast aims to introduce you to the people, initiatives, and ideas shaping Israel from within. I started this show so that you and I can meet the everyday people shaping Israel from within. Among them is Leron Bernstein, Director of Innovation at Koren Publishers. Leron has taken every opportunity to do good during this war. He's shown up, and his impact has been truly outsized. He's that everyday friend and neighbor we all wish we had. His family has adopted neighbors who lost their son in the war. He's performed with his band to boost morale for soldiers. And he's producing a book about heroism on October 7th. Every time I talk to him, I'm inspired, I'm moved, and I have goosebumps. It's my pleasure to say, welcome to the show, Leron.
Thanks very much, Becca. Appreciate the talk up. Hope half of it's true.
Leron, how's your Zionism doing today?
I think my connection to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael has never been stronger, never more powerful. At the same time, very sad with a lot of heartache. So I feel like the connection that there's been, the opportunity for connection within the cloud of this tragedy and darkness is remarkable. And there really has been, an opportunity to step forward and get involved in a way that sort of wasn't accessible. And I think when it comes to that space of volunteering, it's a space where, us as Olim, as immigrants into the country, you come with a lot of passion, a lot of connection, but you never really feel like you're stepping into the country and stepping into society. The army especially is something that seems like it's so far up there and I'm so far down here and it's like inaccessible and elite and beyond. And now having had the opportunity to, sing for more than 4,000 soldiers and all over the country on all these different bases and speaking to all these Rasapim, the logistics coordinators and, the heads of these brigades and you build that connection. So to really, facilitate the space to feel very, very connected to the people. There's a beautiful quote that I heard from Micha Goodman. He wrote this book, Yom HaShmini, very early into the war. He wrote this phenomenal book, and it's in Hebrew. Hopefully, it'll get translated to English at some stage. And he says over there, I heard him on a podcast actually talking about it. He has this line where he says, "Israeli patriotism is very different to all others." Normally we talk about that you belong to your country. So we say, "I belong to Israel." He said, Israeli patriotism is the opposite. He said, what we've seen here since October 7th is not that we belong to Israel, but that the project of Israel, that Israel belongs to us. And I think it's like beautifully profound. He said, he tells a story there about, we didn't wait for the soldiers not to have enough socks, or they didn't have food, they didn't have things to boost their morale, they didn't have people to look after them, all the supplies and logistics going back and forth. We didn't wait for that, and we didn't just say, okay, well, the government needs to take care of it, the army needs to look after it. We stepped forward and we did it, and we took it on because we feel this immense responsibility. So coming from South Africa, coming from overseas and having this opportunity to be so involved in this time, as much as I wish, and we all wish that this time would not have happened, within that darkness there is space to bring light, and it's given an opportunity to feel tremendously connected to my Zionism, to Am Yisrael, to Eretz Yisrael in a way that I could never have imagined.
I'm so happy you're on this episode because I love listening to you speak. So I want to know, we were talking about, bringing light to the darkness. What's driving you to do so much good right now?
A few different things. I think one thing my wife and I, when we saw this was happening, we said, this is a unique moment in history. My children, I've got 2 teenage children, and they said, my 12-year-old daughter came up to me at one stage and she said, this is going to be the time they're going to write about this in history books. We've up until now lived in a time that's been fairly stable. Nothing of such major proportions, maybe COVID, but nothing of such major proportions has happened to the point that, it's like history changing. It's going to be in a textbook and textbooks, whatever we'll learn from in the future. But she said, we're living through history. And I think we sensed that as a family. We all, my wife and I were very involved in youth movements growing up and in Bnei Akiva. Before I came to Israel, I was involved in, the leadership of those youth movements in informal Jewish education, in most recently in our shlichut in South Africa, where we were, fully on all the time. And it was an amazing opportunity to be involved in community and building Jewish identity and Torah. So we've always been active. sort of coming to Israel was a time we sort of had to like step back and be a regular civilian. So that was actually new and interesting. So when the war happened and we saw, wow, there's so much that's needed and so much that can be done, that actually felt more natural in a sense. So we just sort of dived into that, and I think my wife and I, we said to each other, we want to be able to look back at this time and say we stood up to be counted, and we did something meaningful to make a difference. And also as a setting a model for our children. That was one, which is like a lofty approach, I guess. On the other hand, we also just were desperate to find meaning. And I think that's how we all woke up on, the 8th of October, after not sleeping the night before, and felt like, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this time? What's happened to the world? We feel so lost. And I think one of the best things to do when you're in a space of tragedy and feeling so lost is to just be active and see what you can do to help. And if you're in a forward-moving space, you don't get so overwhelmed by the things coming at you. So a bit of a lofty approach and a bit of a pragmatic approach that's kept us doing good and to live with purpose.
When a lot of us talk about, this moment in history, people are talking about advocacy. They're not talking about people-to-people connections, and that's very much your focus. So how did you get into that space?
Sure, it's a great question. I think the power of, I wanted to feel really meaningful. I think advocacy is important, and it's super essential. I didn't feel like it was my superpower. The one thing that I found tremendously inspiring in the first few days after the war was just seeing like the nation of Israel activated. So to quote Micha Goodman again, he talks about how the state of Israel and the intelligence and the army and the government, that was like a catastrophic failure. But the people of Israel rose up in ways that were completely unprecedented and quite unbelievable. He quotes a statistic there of he said in the Yom Kippur War there were 40 acts of bravery that were defined according to those definitions. In October 7th, there were 140, and obviously including many civilians across that. So you just saw the nation rise up, and when it comes to our day-to-day activities, in normal times, we think about you go work in something that you need to work in. You get a job, you get paid, and you live your life. And is that job your passion? Does that job play to your skill set? Lovely when it does, but practically it doesn't always pan out that way. Suddenly I saw work was all over the place for everybody, but everybody rose up to say what can we do that suits our strengths? So if this person loves long drives, they're going to go, move supplies from here to there. I quoted, I spoke about one of this, a friend of mine who lives in Talmud, when I was teaching about this in South Africa a few weeks ago, where I said, he works in a renewable energy company. His name's Chaim Grushko and Ole from America. And his talent in the space was he loves woodwork. It's his hobby. And he, within the first few days, everybody was scared about infiltrations into the Cheder Mamad, into the sealed rooms. And we know that they don't lock from the inside because they're designed for rockets to fall on us. And if the house falls on you, you can't wait for a locksmith when you go save someone. But here we were worried about infiltrations for the first time in the history of the state of Israel. So there was a TikTok video or YouTube video going around that some Israeli had worked out. If you take a plank and you put a hole in it and you put it in a certain way and you wedge it in the frame of the safe room, you'll be able to close it from the inside. And his talent was woodwork. So he went and he bought a whole bunch of planks and he started posting on the groups to say, if you want to get one, come get one. And there we were all lining up outside his house, getting the exact measurements for our door and sticking it in. And we felt safe. So he used his talent to boost morale. So that's my long story to get back to answer your actual question is, what did I feel I could do? I feel very connected to people, and in previous experiences, I've seen the power of being with people and just giving people a space to be with each other as something that's tremendously, not necessarily healing, but can be the most helpful thing. I think we live in a time when we got through technology and science, we think that everything can be solved logically, and we're just waiting to find that one solution in order to decipher it and then solve it. But when it comes to human pain and tragedy, There aren't apps that are going to solve it. There's no simple solution or one thing that somebody's going to say that suddenly, oh, okay, this is the thing that we were waiting for, and now we've got the scientific solution to solve it. There's no pill that you can take. But if we're with each other and we stand alongside each other, that has tremendous power. So I felt that, you used that term to show up, like just to be able to show up and just to be there for people was actually, it's not hard to do that, to just show up. Sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but when you see the effect of it, you realize that person-to-person connection is something that's much more powerful than so many more complicated solutions that we think might solve the problem, and they won't. So just to be with people, to be there for people, and to show that you care, show them that they're not alone, I think is a truly powerful superpower that we all have. We just sometimes don't realize it.
A lot of us talk about having compassion or building tolerance, but you don't just talk about it. You've actually done it. So what is your neighborhood story?
We heard about this Chayal, the soldier that had fallen on October 7th from Tel Mond. There was also a girl that had been killed in the Neighbour festival. I think her funeral happened maybe on the Wednesday, and then the funeral for Elay Adany, her name is Noah Faraj, Zichrona Livracha, and Elay Adany. We saw the notice for his funeral. I happened to have a gap at that time, so I said, let me go pay my respects. I went to the funeral. I was tremendously moved. I ended up being quite close to where he was being buried, and I was very, very moved by the way this family was connected, the way the grandfather spoke about Eli, the way the friends, the brother, the mom, the dad, and just to, on the one hand, see the tremendous pain. On the other hand, there was a real depth to this family, and I was moved, and I feel all the stress and the anxiety of those days just came pouring out, in tears, standing there across from this family that lived in my town, but I've never seen them before, never heard of them before, and now suddenly we're in this shared space of pain. What had happened, also I give a weekly online shiur, and I'd said on the first day, I said, what are we going to do? And we need purpose to wake up in the morning, and we need to be there for each other. So instead of this weekly shiur happening once a week, I said to everybody, come, we're going to meet every day at 9:30. We're going to meet online just to be together, and we're going to learn one of the Pirkei Tehillim, and then we'll say that Tehillim together. And then as that developed, we had, fathers and mothers of soldiers and cousins and daughters. And and by the time I got to Thursday, I was searching for which Tehillim was what we were going to do. And they spoke about this Mizmor 83 at the funeral. And I said, okay, that's the one. And it's quite a remarkable Mizmor because it sounds like you're describing the United Nations coming out against Israel. And I was very moved by that. So I spoke about that in the morning on my shiur on Friday. And Friday afternoon, we found ourselves with a whole bunch of chalot. My wife's an amazing cook and baker, and that was her superpower. She was making lots of food for people during the war. And she had made these 8 chalot that were supposed to go to an army base, but they'd come out the oven too late. So we then said, okay, we're going to find out where these, they were going to be indiscriminate chalot landing anywhere. Now they turned into precision guided missiles. Where were they going to be? So we drove around, and we knew that this family, the husband was on Miluim, so we took it to there, and different people. There were a few soldiers staying in the area, so we took there, and there was like this religious soldier came out, and my wife said, "Here you have it. This is kosher," and he was so grateful. And we had one left, so I said, "You know what? As uncomfortable as it felt, there's this family. I was at the funeral yesterday. I spoke about the son. I found pictures of him online, and I shared the stories that the family had spoken about in the shiur, and we learned to heal him in his name. Let's go see if they're still there." So there were this kid Eli was just an amazing leader. He grew up in Tel Mond. He was a leader in his school. He was a leader in the Scouts over there. Completely beloved. If you look about him online, there's like this Facebook group, Achiyuch Shel Eli, and he's just this massive energy and beautiful smile, amazing, engaging energy. So everybody loved him in the town. They stuck the notices for the Shiva everywhere. So we didn't even have to search for the address. We just looked to the right on the side of the road. We saw the address. We went on our way. We walked in, and I think it was mainly just family and friends there. So we looked strange because they didn't recognize us. So the father, Rami, who is just a wonderful human being, he noticed me, and he was on the phone. He finished his phone call, and he came up to me, and he was interested in what we were doing there. And we started chatting, And I said to him, we're here, we made Aliyah from South Africa and Australia, and we live in Telmond, and I was so moved by what you shared about your son, and we share in your pain, and we just here to show you that we care. And I said, and this morning I actually spoke about your son in the shiur, and there was an album on the floor there, and I said all these pictures, I actually found them online, and I showed these pictures to people. There were people there from Australia and England and South Africa and across Israel, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, wow, they're speaking about our son Eli already, in the world. That's amazing. So he called his wife Orit, and then we told Orit, and my wife had the challah. It was warm, and she put it in her hands. I still remember the moment, and Orit, with tears coming down, she said, "Ani rotzah lekadesh al zeh. I want to make kiddush on this." Right. So she gave it to her sister, and then they called their son Yanir, who I became very close to afterwards. And he said, "Tell them the story. Tell them the story. Tell them you're speaking about Eli." And from that response, the warmth that they took us in, and their response and their embrace, sort of in there, we felt this very deep connection. In a sense, we were these random strangers that had come to say, yes, your pain is local. It's felt in your family and in your friends, but your pain is also the pain of Am Yisrael and the Jewish people. And we're here to show you that everybody that's here, that's also showing you that they love you as family and friends, we're also here because you've paid the ultimate unwanted sacrifice, and we as the whole Jewish people is in pain with you, and is here to support you. So there was something cosmic, and I felt that throughout this time, this narrative and Hashem's guiding hand, and sort of keep on doing the right things, and then you get these sort of bonuses along the way where you do even more than you intend to do. And so then we said, okay, next Shabbat we better go back. So we go every Erev Shabbat, we sit with them, we bring the chalot. It's I can't imagine now going into Shabbat without it. Some cool things that have happened out of it was, this marathon that we spoke about, where 1 week Orit said to me, Yanir is really feeling it at the moment. I hadn't seen him much, because he's just like a chevra man. So he actually every Friday is out with his friends for hummus. He's in the army during the week, and he comes back on Fridays, and he goes out with his friends for hummus. So she said he was feeling a little bit down. So I said, I'm not going to try to be a psychologist. I'm not going to chat to him. We also come from different worlds, but maybe I can just be there for him. And I said, the world has gone absolutely crazy. And I've always thought that running the half marathon in Jerusalem is a crazy thing to do. There's other half marathons that you can run, and they're regularly flat, relatively flat and manageable. But I'd done the 10K. It was the first race I ever did. I only started running when I made Aliyah 4.5 years ago. And this 10K was brutal, to run up these hills. And then, you getting towards the end, and suddenly there's this massive hill. You feel like you're running the story of the Jewish people, You're as you feel you're okay and you're on the downhill, suddenly this uphill hits you, and you're like, who designed this course? Do you like people? So I said, it'd be crazy to do that twice on the half marathon. So I said to Orit, do you think Yanir would run the half marathon with me? Absolutely, he's in. So I saw Yanir a couple of days later, and I said, are you up for it? Absolutely. The most lovely, happy-go-lucky young man. And then we started training. So every Friday morning we'd have to do runs in between, him on his army base, me on home base, on the home front. And then on Fridays we'd meet to do the long runs. So starting from 10 to 12 to 15, eventually to 18. So that's a bit of a story.
I'm always left speechless when I speak with you, and there's a few other components to this story that we haven't yet touched on. So something happened 30 days after Eli died.
So I remember Orit sent us the video of their interview on the news. Quite remarkable that 30 days on the Shloshim of Eli's passing, it turned out to be the day of Yanir's Tekes Kumta, so getting his beret at the end of his training. And if the army had made the decision, but the army with the family had decided that Orit and Rami would be present at the ceremony to give the Kumta, the beret of Eli, to Yanir as his Kumta. Tremendously moving to watch that footage. The thing that struck Orit and Rami was that there was a specific song playing in the background, and that was the song of Nigmar by Idan Amedi. So Idan Amedi is a famous singer. Overseas people probably know him because he's one of the lead actors in Fauda. and he's just a remarkable human being because he's been serving in the war. He actually got injured, but he's like the ultimate mensch, celebrity, who's grounded, who could have so easily just gone around performing during the war, but wanted to do his service as just a regular person, and the Adanis had told me about this connection to Adany Adany's music. Eli loved Adany Adany, and his soldiers also spoke about it. I think they read out one of his songs, the lyrics at the funeral, and then all the different places we're talking about, Eli was always about like how he would use Adany Adany's music. I think Adany Adany phoned the family, after the tragedy, and there the song of Adany Adany was playing in the background completely randomly while they were handing over the beret. And nigmar, right, which means finished. So sort of like the end of one chapter, the beginning of another. So I was very intrigued because we at the same time had started singing for the soldiers with my band Hakafot Shniot. Shout out to Yair Lera and Avi Wiesenberg and Shmu Kraus, who've been doing this journey with us. So I was like so intrigued by this music. I listened to like regular Jewish music, some Israeli music, not much. I actually didn't connect to it before the war. Now it's like all I listen to. My Spotify algorithm has gone crazy. And I started learning the Adany Adany songs. And what happened is that we realized like these were the songs that actually shifted every single event that we did with the soldiers. You're always trying to find this, like trying to form the dynamics when you're performing for strangers and they're looking at us as strangers, and we ain't no Adany Adany, and we're not Yishar Ribo, we're not Hanan Ben Ari, and we're not Omer Adam, unfortunately for them, but we try to sing their songs. But we there, and suddenly I found that when we did the Adany Adany songs, it flipped the whole event every time, and I felt like it was like sort of this connection to Eli, and he had exposed me after his passing to this music. It then became like the key to all the singing. And he's also unique. Adany Adany, he's got the song Ka'ev Shel Lochamim, which was his signature song that came out and really brought him into the celebrity status in Israel, where he talks about the pain of warriors, and it's like he's sort of like the first person to acknowledge like the pain and PTSD of soldiers that they go through. So he's just this very, very human person, and you feel that in his music, and perhaps that's why sort of like we've resonated in supporting soldiers and that, and sort of that it's Eli's favorite singer. It's been quite remarkable how it's all come together.
This story very much also relates to Eli's brother, who's now in the army. So how is it, from your perspective, to see this family who lost one son in war to now have another son that's really at the beginning of his army service?
The family is tremendously, Zionist. Really like grew up in the heart of Israel and love Israel, and appreciate the army, and saw the heroism of their son being manifest through the army. I often think about the difficulty. Like, so Eli, in order to get into the elite units that he wanted to get into, he was injured. He was like a star volleyball player, and he got injured, and they took his profile down. And then he worked very, very hard and very diligently, and was quite obstinate around re-raising his profile, that he could become step back into this, apply for this elite unit, and then succeed, and then actually become a captain of soldiers. And Yanir followed the same track. I think in basketball he got injured, took down his profile, and then fought like crazy to raise up his profile and then get into an elite unit as well. As far as I understand, Yanir is now, he's still serving in that elite unit. He doesn't go into the battlefront itself. He'll like go right up to it. So there's something sad there as well. It's like he lost his big brother, who he looked up to tremendously, very, very close. And he's also lost the opportunity to be manifest himself as a warrior for Israel in the way that he worked so hard for so many years. It's hard to say that sentence, right? Like when you can even like ponder, like, so he would want to actually go in, but that's the nature of our people. We like manifest when we putting our best selves forward and being completely, one and the same in terms of and serving the people of Israel. So I think about that. It's like not something I'd ever, necessarily chat to him about, but yeah. So he's not. They don't, they're very connected to the army and as a family, but him as an individual, I think he's going to hopefully won't be in harm's way, but still, doing his service even though he can't do it fully, he's doing what he's now, moved into completely fully with absolute commitment and joy. And I can't, talk enough about just how Yanir's personality, how he's able to just deal with all of this, stay positive, just be such a lovely person to just be around, and continue and carry on. So yeah, there's a lot of pain, but that doesn't there's a lot of pain, but it doesn't veer them off their mission.
In terms of the army, there's also other connections that you have to Elay.
Yeah, there was quite a remarkable connection with Elay up until now. I spoke about how we like part of this Mizmor, Pei Gimel, random people coming to this family and then being connected with them, and just this beautiful Am Yisrael connection, but still feels random. We're still strangers in a sense. And then suddenly I took this trip to South Africa. I was very blessed to have been brought out to South Africa for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, and I was teaching I got to teach at the school there, school that I ran before we made Aliyah, Yeshiva College. It was an amazing community and school there. And one of the things I wanted to do, I wanted to use the running as well as part of the tour. So with a friend of mine, we organized the run for the community, 10.7 kilometers for 10 over 7. Even though in South Africa we say 7 over 10, but we organized this run. Since the beginning of the war, whenever I ran 10 kilometers, I always add 700 meters to create some sort of mark for me, and it helps me with narrative. I think narrative can be something that we use. We go backwards to sort of make sense of things, but it can also be a tool that helps us in the present and to move forward. So I used to add this, do the strange thing with my runs. So I said, let's do this run in South Africa, 10.7 kilometers for 10 over 7. And we had 40 people show up, and it's amazing. People think that in South Africa, if you walk around with a kippah or you walk around with an Israeli flag, you're not going to last very long. It's not true. The government is corrupt and terrible, and, they just lost their majority for the first time, which is cause for celebration. Hopefully good will come out of it. But the people in South Africa love Israel. Most people love Israel. I walked around with my kippah and I said to them, I'm from Israel. And they were like, oh, we love Israel. So there we were running through the streets of Johannesburg with shirts with Eli's name. I saw that they were doing connecting to the Ratzim Shel Zichram, running in their memory that they do in Israel. So I saw they'd made shirts for it. I reached out to Orit. Orit got me some shirts, and we put on these shirts and we're running. And one of my past students, who was actually who fought in the war, he came up to me and he said, it says here Tzevet Adany, right? Like Team Adany. How do you connect it to Team Adany? So I told him, and he said he's got a friend who I know was also at the school, who was who was served in Team Adany, and he still is. And I couldn't believe it. Actually didn't believe it. So I was like, I pushed it to the side. I said it can't be. Anyway, we carried on with the run, and I spoke to him a little bit afterwards. He then sent me a voice note from the student, and I messaged Orit afterwards. I said, there must be some other Tzevet Adany. It can't be that the same thing. This is just too uncanny. So I wrote to Orit, do you know this student? And I said the name. I messaged Orit and I said, do you know this person? And she said, obviously, he drove the Savannah Jeep into Kfar Aza under fire in order to save Eli's body in Kfar Aza, to take him out. So I couldn't believe it. He was one of my students. You sort of see these, I don't know if you can call it light, but in this darkness, it's such a contradiction to say that, we see the God running the world, but we say where is God when all this tragedy hits us? He's obviously, out of the picture for a bit. How can this all happen? But then when you're involved in the darkness and trying to do things and sort of move positively, there are these little rays of light or little signals and signs that come through to say, I can't explain to you why this is happening, but I'm here. I'm still with you. When we talk about that, the Jewish people goes into exile, there's sources that talk about Hashem goes into exile with us. So he's there with us in that pain. And that was it was just remarkable. It was on the day that I had planned to talk about Elay to the community in South Africa. And I got the video from this other student. And I said to him, he had video called me the day before because Orit couldn't believe it. So she phoned him. He was on a base about to go into Rafiach. And he called me, video called me, and I couldn't believe it. Complete chills. And then the next day I said, send me a video that I can show the community. And there we were. I told them the story of Eli. And then we had this video of him talking to the community and saying, you don't know what it meant for me. You know, we're on the border of Gaza, we're about to go in. And here I see my friends and family and community members running with my team name, Sevet Adany. And he shows on the video that he's part of this Sevet. He's wearing that shirt. And, I just felt it was like a moment where Hashem says, I can't expect you to understand what's going on, but I'm there with you. And since then, the connection with the Adanys has become tremendously, tremendously close, because there actually was a pre-existing real connection that we didn't know for 8 months, but now we know it very well. And I'm working on at the moment through Hakafot Shniyot. I reached out to the students' logistics coordinator in the army, and hopefully within the next week or so, we're going to go do a barbecue for them and perform for them. So that'll really be bringing it all full circle.
I get goosebumps every time you speak. When you stop and you think about what you've done with this family and the connections that you have and how your lives have been woven together, what comes to mind?
I think we also feel privileged and grateful, that they've allowed us in. Every time we knock on their door on Friday afternoon, we go up there with like tremendous respect and humility. Always worried, like, are we bothering them? Are we in their space? So I make sure to bring my children because they're beautiful people. And then we go sit with them and we see that it's a special time. So I think, we, as much as we give, we receive far, far more in terms of just knowing that we can try to do something meaningful in a time that feels sometimes so meaningless and so difficult.
What's so moving about so much that you're doing is that while this is such an Israeli local story, you've really been able to bring this story of yours to audiences abroad. What's your secret sauce in that?
I think just being human, I guess, like human, we're relatable across borders and geography. And I carry my background with me, like having grown up proudly in South Africa in an amazing community, having had leadership opportunities there in B'nai Kiva and at Yeshiva College and across the community. I think that's sort of like, I carry that with me. I'm like proud of where I came from, the community that I felt raised in. And I guess that like resonates back. And I also feel that when we're doing things in Israel, the volunteering, singing, the being with people, we're representing global Jewry. Like we're there as representatives to say, this is not just an Israel story. It's not like a state of Israel story of what happened on October 7th. It's a people of Israel story. It's a Jewish people that have been through this.
There's so much more we can unpack with the Adany story, but you are also involved with a band that's been going around the country to boost morale for soldiers. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun and an amazing opportunity. I said, I always had dreams of being a big celebrity singer, and now I get a captive audience at all these bases all over Israel. So the band's called Hakafot Shniyot. Very briefly, how we got that name, we didn't know we were ever going to have a band or have a name, but my good friend from Telmon, Yair Lera, had a friend who was running a barbecue that evening, and he said to him, they've asked for music as well. Yeah, he was an amazing guitar player. He called me up and he said, I'll play guitar if you sing. So we're like, okay, sounds cool. So we went on our way, and there we performed in a place called Hodaya down south for Duvdevan, which is actually the unit that that's connected to some of the people we've spoken about. And it was like, we were like on our phone, it was like very, very amateur. And then we started seeing that there was like a request for this. So it started getting going. On the night that we unpacked like this equipment, within the community, we raised money for it, and within a day, we had money to buy our own equipment. We went out, we unpacked the equipment at the Urim base, and after we danced and sung with the soldiers, one of the soldiers comes up to us. I think his name is Elad, perhaps from Maccabim, and Adiel from Maccabim comes up to us, and he says, the dancing and the music and the being together that you created for us tonight is in place of the Hakafot Shniyot that all of Am Yisrael lost and that we didn't have on the end of October 7th. So traditionally in Israel, there's like this great custom that because Simchat Torah is only one day in Israel and it's 2 days in overseas, there's this custom that developed, also quite an amazing history. But the custom developed that on the end of Simchat Torah, we all go out, across Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, all over, and people connect, secular, religious, left, right, all come out to the streets and dance around the Torah. And it's called Hakafot Shniyot, like the second going around. And he said that what we did for them on that base on that night, I think maybe a month and a half after the war had broken out, was in place of that, with tears in his eyes. And Yair and I looked at each other, we're like, okay, that's the name of the band. So I feel that there was like been sort of 3 goals that we had with the band. The first was to bring the home front to the front line, to say, we are here to support you. We care for you. You're giving up so much. You're sacrificing so much. We're here just to give you one night, and we can raise your spirits and show you that we care. The second goal was to bring the front line to the home front. So, like I was saying earlier, to show people at home, these are the faces of the soldiers. The media out there is giving these very skewed and terrible pictures of these soldiers, but they're people just like us. And they are happy and positive and uplifted and motivated, and good people. And then the third goal was just to give people unburdened moments of joy. It was very hard to smile and be happy during those times. You felt guilty, like, for being happy and having a moment with your kid or whatever. And what we did here, we said, like, you can watch these videos and find joy, and you don't have to feel guilty about it, because there's no guilt in seeing a soldier who's on the front line and who's uplifted and who's happy and is enjoying and dancing in a funny way to these songs. And so I felt like we had this mission, and it was a privilege to be able to serve in that. So there's 4 of us as the core team. Myself, Yair, Avi Wiesenberg plays the cajon, like a box drum, and then Shmu Kraus is a good friend of ours from Australia. So it's Australia, England, South Africa. We're all represented. We often sometimes have guys joining us, Olim from the US and Canada, so we go out and we do it all together, and it's really a lot of fun. And feel like we're doing something meaningful.
There's a beautiful quote from your band that you couldn't pick up weapons, so you picked up instruments instead.
Yeah. So that we felt as everybody wanted to do something on that first day, October 7th, October 8th, we had so much rage and so much disappointment, disillusionment, and upset that I felt there was a certain privilege in actually being able to put on an army uniform and have a gun and get into a tank and get into a plane, that a regular Israeli had. On the other hand, their sacrifice is unreal, and leaving their families and all of that, so it all comes together, this mixed bag. But they had a reaction, they had something to do. We felt, what was our place? We can't just stay at home and do nothing. So let's get out there, let's lift up these instruments of music and go uplift people. And I feel when we perform for the soldiers, we have this like line that we say to them, where it's better said in Hebrew, and I'll translate it afterwards, where we say to them, "Anachnu olim banu mikol rachmei ha'olam." We're immigrants. We came from all different places. Lo zachinu larim klei neshek. We didn't merit to lift up weapons, instruments of war. As hiramnu klei nagina lechazek etchem. So we lifted up instruments of music, weapons of the soul, and then we sing songs that come from, we sing Wonderwall by Oasis is the most popular song. So we say we also get to bring all the good things and the fun things from Chutz La'aretz to come and uplift you in doing what you're doing. And then we said the things that you're doing aren't just for the state of Israel. They're not only just for the people of Israel as well, it's also for the world and for humanity in this war that we're in now. And I said, despite what the world thinks about it, they don't realize that, but we're doing this in spite of their hatred towards us. We're doing this to save them, because we're fighting for morality and civility and goodness and peace and all the values that ultimately every human being in their most essential space of truth, should resonate with. The other important thing is our, you look at the families of the reservists, and I think often when we speak to the Chayalim out on the front lines, they'll say to us, we appreciate everything you're doing for us, but the real heroes are our wives back at home. and to think what they're going through. A soldier puts on a uniform, he's got to be brave, he's got to sacrifice a lot, but he gets his command and he does what he's told to do. There's something like sort of simple and binary when it comes to mothers at home looking after kids in small homes with school clothes and all these different things. That's tremendously challenging and complex. And you're not wearing a uniform that anybody can see, and it's complicated and difficult. Nobody's witnessing when you work so hard to overcome that need to scream at your kids, and you're really justified in doing it, but you choose not to. That's heroism and bravery, because you've got to look after these kids, and we've got to look after the home front so that the next chapter of rebuilding, that our homes are still intact.
You're also working on a book about heroism on October 7th. Tell us a little bit about that book.
Yes, I got to be a small cog in this wheel at where I work at Koren. I don't have a lot to do with the print side of things. I'm spending most of my time doing some exciting digital projects. My boss was on Miluim, Yeshua Miller, and he was serving in the infantry. And my graphic designer, he's the art director at Koren. He's called up and he's still on half Miluim duty. And then the editor-in-chief at Koren, who I work with a lot, he was called up. He was the head of a platoon. So suddenly there was like no reason for me to come to work. I was doing a lot of work remotely, but nobody to work with. And they reached out to me from the print side and said, "Do you have capacity to work on this book?" And it was just the privilege of a lifetime. So the book is called Yom Echad B'October. It's out in Hebrew. It's coming out soon, called One Day in October. In English, it's being translated. And I had the privilege to be the project manager. So a regular book that comes into Koren will come with a manuscript and an idea, some support and backing, and they'll present it to Koren. Koren will assess whether it's a book that fits us and what the viability of it is, and then go through the motions, edit it, and push it through. Over here, it was very different because we wanted to take the 40 stories of heroism. We wanted to get exclusive interviews of them. We wanted to get the interview done by professional interviewers, transcribe the interview, and then the beauty and power of this book is how the two authors, Yair Agmon and Oria Mavorach, have retold the stories in a documentary prose style. So they've basically taken the stories and put them in first-person prose, and with a way of highlighting the unique character trait of heroism of each hero and how that was manifest on October 7th.
You've been in a lot of places, from the neighborhood level through to national and international. From your perspective, how is Israeli society changing during the war?
I think there's definitely this powerful feeling of unity that we all experienced, and it was proactive unity. I think the challenge now is how do we stay unified without this darkness above us that calls us up into standing in that proactive space. Micha Goodman quotes him again as a beautiful way that he takes apart society into three different categories. He said, normally we think about it as binary, and that's what the world will have us think, especially based on American politics, and that you're either left or right, or you're Republican or Democrat, and he says Israeli society, without going too deep into it, the core of Israeli society that we saw on October 7th and afterwards is this hybrid of a collective individual, liberal, free-thinking, nationalistic person, and that's most of Israel. And on October 7th, we were able to gain that self-awareness of that is who we are. We can be tremendously individualistic, but we're going to go serve in the army without a question. There was a question about whether people were going to come for their reserve duty. There was 150% conscription in the beginning. So we were able to blow those myths up, which is really important. But now we have to be very, very careful and proactive in how we retain that hybrid identity moving forward, and not just fall into these easy binary categories that'll rip us apart. I think that's the work that we have to do now. And music is a way of bringing people together and being with people. Those are the different things I think we need to think about. Is what are the practical laws of unity, and how do we manifest them in society now?
It's with a heavy heart that I have to say that we're slowly running out of time on this episode. But the last question I ask every guest is, what is giving you hope today?
Us, the people. I think when we've got enough time to be present and think about it, or when we're called up to be proactive and ferociously fighting for our people, there's this immense beauty that shines out from the Jewish people and from the Israeli people, and that gives me tremendous hope. And when we steer away from it and we do silly things and we express our disunity, that's not our essence. So I think knowing that like there's this indestructible essence of love and care and unity and partnership and responsibility that the Jewish people feel together, that gives me tremendous hope.
Leron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Becca. What an opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's conversation, and thank you to Naomi Studios for hosting us. If you want to stay up to date with the Homefront Podcast, check us out on social media and subscribe to support the people of Israel. We'll see you in the next episode.